The stars blinked in the blackness of space, silent and cold. Then, with a sudden flash, the human fleet arrived. Dozens of warships dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of the Soltron 9 asteroid belt. Their hulls glowed faintly as engines cooled and shields powered up. The flagship UHS Resolute led the formation, a massive battle cruiser, sharp-edged and armed to the teeth. Inside the command bridge of the Resolute, Commander Jackson Morrow stood tall, hands behind his back, his eyes locked on the shifting tactical map hovering in front of him. He was a man used to pressure. His sharp jaw, short-cropped dark hair, and steel-gray eyes gave the impression of someone who had stared death in the face more than once and survived. "All ships accounted for," said Lieutenant Kira Voss, the ship's tactical officer. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of tension. "But sensors are picking up strange readings in the asteroid field. Movement patterns, non-random." Morrow didn't flinch. "The Varn are here. They know we're coming." He turned slightly, addressing the bridge crew. "Keep formation. Activate electronic countermeasures. I want our AI running predictive patterns on every rock out there." The crew moved swiftly. This was not their first mission under Morrow's command. He was respected, even if he wasn't warm. He didn't need to yell to be obeyed. His calm was enough. The asteroid belt outside was ancient, remnants of a shattered planet long dead. Sharp fragments of rock the size of cities drifted slowly, casting long shadows against the stars. Navigating through it was dangerous even without an enemy waiting. "We have 30 minutes before we reach the edge of the Varn defense grid," Kira said, "assuming they don't come to us first." Morrow nodded. "They'll come, but not head-on. That's not Krelzor's style." Everyone on the bridge knew the name. Warlord Krelzor, Varn High Commander, brutal and brilliant. He was the architect of the Outer Rim invasion, the one who'd crushed 2 colonies before Earth's fleet could react. Morrow had studied him, obsessed over him. The Varn commander didn't make mistakes, which meant this mission had to go exactly as planned. The goal was clear: punch through the Varn defenses, reach their command node, and destroy it. A precise strike, using the most advanced AI-assisted targeting system ever deployed by humanity. The fleet was smaller than the enemies, but with speed and timing, they could cripple the Varn before a full invasion began. "Send the final burst to Earth Command," Morrow said, "confirming we've entered the war zone." "Aye, Commander," a soft chime sounded. Communications were sent, then silence returned. Only the hum of the ship's systems filled the air. The crew worked in practiced rhythm. Status lights blinked, power levels fluctuated slightly, and still the tactical map updated, showing the massive stretch of asteroids ahead. Morrow's gaze never wavered. "Commander," Kira said again, softer this time. "Permission to speak freely." He looked at her. "Go ahead. There's no backup coming. If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does," Morrow interrupted gently, "then we make sure the Varn bleed before we fall." Kira nodded. Nothing more needed to be said. The asteroid field grew closer. Shadows deepened. Faint energy signatures flickered at the edge of their sensors. Varn scout ships, cloaked but not invisible. The enemy was waiting, watching. Morrow turned to his crew one last time. "Battle stations, shields at full. No one breaks formation without my order. We do this clean. We do this fast." As klaxons sounded and lights dimmed to combat mode, Morrow stepped to the viewport. Ahead lay chaos, danger, death, but also victory, if they were good enough. "Let's begin," he said. The asteroid belt surrounded the fleet like a sleeping monster. Jagged rocks drifted in slow, silent orbits, but the danger they carried was real. A single mistake could send a ship crashing into a drifting mass of iron and ice. And somewhere out there, hidden among the debris, the Varn waited. Inside the UHS Resolute, Commander Jackson Morrow stood in the war room, staring at the new data being fed to the holographic display. He'd ordered full scans of the nearby rocks. The results were troubling. "Too many heat signatures," said Chief Analyst Brent Levesque. "Some are decoys, some are Varn ships. Hard to tell which is which." "They want us to guess wrong," Morrow replied quietly. "They want us to hesitate." He stepped back from the display and let the crew continue their work. He walked to the side of the room, where a small observation window overlooked the fleet outside. The silence pressed in. His mind, against his will, drifted back 5 years to the outer colony of Horizon 6. That mission had gone wrong, horribly wrong. At the time, he had been a younger officer, second in command of the UHS Vanguard. A Varn raiding fleet had entered orbit, fast and aggressive. Morrow had suggested pulling back to regroup. The commander had agreed, but in that short window, the Varn had struck. Hundreds died, including the entire crew of the colony's orbital platform, his younger brother among them. Morrow hadn't hesitated because he was weak. He had hesitated because he hadn't known, because he had doubted himself. That mistake had stayed with him. Every mission since then, every plan, every order, was shaped by that failure. Now, with the lives of thousands depending on him again, there was no room for doubt. He returned to the center of the room. "Prep the AI system," he said. Lieutenant Kira Voss, now at the command table, looked up. "You want to bring it online already?" "Yes," Morrow said. "We'll be using the neural strike grid. Full integration. I want target locks calculated down to the nanosecond." Kira hesitated. "That's an untested system in a real battle. We haven't even—" Morrow's tone didn't change. "That's why we're here. This fleet wasn't built to outgun the Varn. It was built to outthink them. The neural grid is our edge. Without it, we're just steel against steel." She nodded and turned to the terminal, entering the activation codes. All across the fleet, AI systems came to life. Dozens of ships now shared tactical data instantly, learning and adjusting in real time. The human fleet had just become something more, a coordinated machine, faster and smarter than any crew alone could ever manage. Morrow turned to his senior officers. "Here's the plan." A new map formed above the table. It showed the asteroid field as a 3D model, red dots marking probable Varn positions. "We split the fleet into 2 wings," he explained. "One moves through the main corridor, draws fire. The other, our strike wing, flanks from the far side. The command node is here." He pointed to a cluster of larger asteroids near the edge of the field. "Deep inside, hard to reach. That's our target." Lieutenant Arlen, the ship's flight commander, raised a brow. "They'll see us coming." "They will," Morrow said. "And they'll commit everything to stopping the decoy wing. That's when we strike." "And if they don't fall for it?" Kira asked. Morrow looked her in the eyes. "Then we adapt. But we don't pull back." There was silence for a moment. Then Kira nodded. No one else spoke. The plan was dangerous, risky, but every person in that room knew the stakes. If they failed, the Varn would break through to the colonies. Millions of lives would be at risk. Earth itself could be next. Morrow gave one final order before dismissing the staff. "Remind the crews why they're here. Tell them to look at the stars and remember every face they left behind. We're not fighting for glory. We're fighting for survival." As the officers left, Morrow remained, standing alone in the war room. The lights dimmed slightly, and the hum of the ship's systems filled the silence once again. He placed one hand on the table's edge and stared at the flickering model of the battlefield. This time he wouldn't hesitate. This time he wouldn't fail. The human fleet began to move. Under Commander Jackson Morrow's command, 2 wings of warships split and glided into the asteroid belt. Massive chunks of rock, some the size of cities, loomed around them. The ships had to move carefully, using thrusters instead of engines to avoid disturbing the unstable field. The decoy wing, led by Captain Ilara Dane aboard the UHS Titan, headed toward the main corridor through the belt, a wide gap between floating debris where most would expect a fleet to travel. It was dangerous, but direct. It was meant to draw the Varn out. The strike wing, smaller and quieter, stayed low and close to the shadows. Commander Morrow led them personally aboard the UHS Resolute, guiding the ships along the jagged outer edge of the field. Their goal was to slip past the Varn lines and reach the enemy command node, a heavily protected station deep within the asteroids. All ships maintain formation, Morrow ordered over fleet-wide comms. Hold calm silence unless absolutely necessary. The bridge of the Resolute was dim, bathed in blue light from the tactical displays. The AI system, Neural Strike Grid, was fully online. Holographic images of the surrounding field flickered in the air, constantly updating with ship movements, energy readings, and threat predictions. The system was already learning, adjusting. Morrow could feel its calculations pressing into his mind, guiding choices without forcing them. Lieutenant Kira Voss stood at her station, watching the system closely. AI reports a 72% chance the Varn will strike the decoy wing within the next 20 minutes. Good, Morrow replied. That gives us 15 to get in position. He looked at the shifting rocks outside the main viewport. The asteroid belt was no friend to either side. It was unpredictable, dangerous. One bad drift or misjudged turn could mean a collision that would tear a warship apart. Sir, Kira said, her voice sharp now. I have something, faint energy pulses. They're tracking us. Morrow stepped closer to her station. How many? 3. No, 4. Small Varn scout drones, hiding inside the rocks. They're shadowing our wing. They're watching, Morrow said. Just like I expected. He turned to Ensign Kellier, on communications. Send a narrow beam signal to the UHS Titan. Tell Captain Dane to begin the diversion now. Kellier nodded and began transmitting through the encrypted channel. Moments later, on the edge of the asteroid field, the Titan opened fire. Bright flashes lit up the dark as Earth's decoy wing unleashed a storm of plasma cannons and missile fire into the rocks ahead. Explosions scattered debris in every direction. The Varn took the bait. Dozens of alien warships burst from hiding, forming a wall of living metal. Their ships were sleek, black, and covered in strange glowing markings, organic in shape, but deadly in purpose. They swarmed toward the Titan and its escorts with ruthless speed. The Varn are committing to the corridor, Kira reported. Just like we hoped. Morrow nodded. Maintain stealth. We move now. The strike wing slipped deeper into the asteroid field. Their systems ran silent. Weapons stayed cold. The AI mapped a precise route between moving rocks, threading the fleet through dangerous gaps and narrow channels. Tension hung in the air. One mistake, one sound, one burst of heat, and they would be found. Morrow stood still, eyes scanning the display. Each second passed like a knife edge. His fingers hovered above the command interface, but he didn't move. Then the warning came. Enemy presence ahead, Kira said quietly. Not moving, not firing. The hologram updated to show 5 Varn cruisers, completely still. They were parked like statues in the shadow of a large asteroid, weapons powered down. A trap, Morrow said. Looks like they expected a flanking maneuver, said Kira. Morrow studied the positioning. The cruisers blocked the final approach to the command node. Behind them, the structure they were guarding floated in silence, massive, metallic, and shielded. Warlord Krelzo had prepared for this. We can't turn back, Morrow said calmly. Not now. Kira glanced at him. Then what do? We strike first. He turned to the weapons officer. Target all 5 cruisers. Queue coordinated strike packages. Have the neural grid calculate simultaneous kill shots. Yes, sir. Morrow watched as the AI worked. The targeting system mapped each Varn cruiser in seconds, highlighting weak points in the armor and shield coverage. Missiles were assigned, firing angles calculated. Everything was planned to the smallest detail. Fire when ready, Morrow said. Outside, the silence ended. Dozens of precision warheads shot out from hidden launch bays, slicing through the dark like bolts of lightning. The Varn cruisers reacted a moment too late. The first exploded in a bright ball of flame. The second was torn in half. The third tried to fire back, but was hit in the reactor core. The last 2 tried to run, but the neural grid had already predicted their escape paths. They didn't make it far. Targets destroyed, Kira said, eyes wide. No return fire. They never saw it coming. Morrow gave a rare nod of approval. Then we're in. Ahead of them, the Varn command node waited. The trap had been set, and now it had been turned against the enemy. The Varn command node floated ahead, cold and massive, like a beast asleep in deep space. It was shaped like a jagged spearhead, made of black alloy and pulsating with red light. Shield generators glowed at its core, hidden behind heavy armor. Around it, debris drifted, twisted metal from old battles and broken ships. Commander Jackson Morrow stood at the center of the UHS Resolute's bridge, focused on the final phase of the mission. "We're in position," Lieutenant Kira Voss said. "Command node confirmed. Shield is active. No sign of reinforcements." Yet, Morrow nodded slowly. "Then this is our window." The strike wing tightened formation, moving silently closer to the target. They had made it through the asteroid field, past the hidden enemy scouts, and now stood at the edge of the Varn's nerve center. "This is where we finish it," Morrow said over the fleet channel. "We take out the node, and the Varn fleet falls into chaos. No more orders, no more coordination, just panic." His words were calm but firm. Every captain in the strike wing listened closely. They knew what was at stake. Behind them, the decoy wing still fought desperately in the corridor, outnumbered but holding the line. Kira brought up the tactical display. "Shield strength on the node is extreme. We'll need to drop it before we can do any real damage." Morrow pointed at the 4 shield pylons surrounding the node. "Those are the weak points. Hit them hard and fast. Once they're gone, we fire everything at the core." "AI is locking onto shield pylons now," said Weapons Officer Wren. "Strike package forming, then execute," Morrow ordered. The human ship surged forward, missiles launched in perfect formation. The neural grid controlled every movement, predicting every possible enemy response before it could happen. Explosions lit up the darkness as the first pylon was hit. A second followed seconds later, but the third and fourth were better protected. Suddenly, alarms blared. Multiple Varn signatures inbound. Kira shouted, 30 ships dropping out of stealth. They were waiting for us." Red lights flashed across the bridge. The Resolute shook as enemy fire slammed into its outer shields. The rest of the strike wing broke formation to engage. "Maintain focus," Morrow called out. "The node is still the target." Outside, chaos erupted. Human and Varn ships collided in a fierce dogfight. Fighters twisted through asteroid debris, dodging plasma bolts and shrapnel. Laser fire lit up the black as the two sides clashed in close quarters. The Resolute charged toward the final pylons, guns blazing. Smaller ships circled it, protecting its flanks. But the Varn were relentless. A blast rocked the bridge. Sparks flew from a control panel. One crew member fell, injured. Smoke curled from the ceiling vents. "Shields down to 42%. Kira shouted. "Hull damage on decks 7 through 9. Stay locked on those targets," Morrow said. "We're not turning back." The third pylon exploded in a ball of fire. The fourth remained. "Route all power to forward weapons," Morrow ordered. "I'm taking the shot myself." He stepped to the targeting console. The neural grid gave him firing data, but he controlled the weapon. His hands were steady as he aimed the ship's primary plasma lance. Outside, the Varn command node loomed larger. The fourth pylon glowed bright red, its shield flickering. Morrow fired. The lance shot forward, a burning beam of energy cutting through the dark. It slammed into the pylon. The shield collapsed. The pylon cracked, then shattered completely. "All 4 down," Wren shouted. "Main shield is offline." "Then finish it," Morrow said. "Fire everything." The entire strike wing focused their fire on the exposed core of the command node. Missiles, lasers, and kinetic rounds slammed into it. Armor buckled. Energy surged wildly. Inside, systems began to fail. The node shuddered. Then it exploded. A massive fireball spread outward, vaporizing nearby debris. A wave of energy pulsed through space. The Varn ships, now leaderless, scattered in confusion, their fleets falling apart. Kira reported. "They're retreating." Morrow exhaled slowly. The battle had cost them. At least 3 of their own ships were gone. Others burned or drifted, heavily damaged. But the mission was complete. The node was destroyed. The Varn were in full retreat. The tide of the war had shifted. But Morrow didn't celebrate. He looked around the bridge. Smoke still hung in the air. The crew worked in silence, tending to the wounded, restoring systems, preparing for what came next. They had won, but it didn't feel like victory, only survival. The battlefield was burning. Wreckage floated between the broken asteroids, twisted steel, shattered hulls, bodies drifting weightless in the void. Pieces of Varn and human ships alike spun slowly, caught in the pull of shattered gravity fields. Commander Jackson Morrow stood on the damaged bridge of the UHS Resolute, watching the debris slide past the viewport. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, and a thin line of blood traced his temple. The lighting was dim, systems flickering, but the ship was still alive. All Varn ships in the sector are retreating, Lieutenant Kira Voss reported. Her voice was low and tired. Some are still firing randomly. No coordination, no signals from the command node. It's gone. Good, Morrow said. He didn't look away from the glass. And our casualties? Kira hesitated. 3 ships destroyed, 7 damaged, 2 crews with heavy losses. Rescue teams are searching for survivors in the wreckage. Morrow closed his eyes for a moment. Too many, but it could have been worse. If they had failed, the Varn would have torn through the outer colonies. Earth would have been next. Any word from the Titan? He asked. Yes, Kira said. Captain Dane reports the decoy wing held the line. Barely. They're regrouping now. The Varn forces in the corridor broke apart after the command node was destroyed. Morrow gave a slight nod. The plan had worked, but at a high cost. He turned away from the viewport and walked toward the central console. The neural grid was still active, though damaged. Sparks flickered across the surface. The AI had done its job faster than any human crew could manage, but it couldn't replace the people they'd lost. Open a channel to the fleet, Morrow said. Kira activated the comm system. A soft beep confirmed the link was live. This is Commander Morrow, he said, speaking into the quiet. The Varn have fallen back. Their command structure is gone. We've dealt them a blow they won't recover from quickly. You all did what many thought was impossible. You held the line. You fought through hell. And you endured. He paused. I know many of you lost friends, crewmates, and loved ones. There will be time to grieve. But for now, know this. Because of your courage, Earth and the colonies still stand. You did not break. And because of that, they did. He ended the transmission and sat down heavily in his command chair. It was the first time he had sat in hours. The bridge was quiet again. Only the hum of damaged systems and the occasional crackle of static filled the air. Outside, the last Varn ships vanished into the dark, their trails fading across the stars. Commander, Kira said after a few minutes. Engineering reports partial control is restored. Life support and navigation systems are stable. We'll be able to return to the rendezvous point. Good, Morrow said. A medical officer entered the bridge, quietly checking the injured. Others began clearing debris, replacing sparking panels and rebooting consoles. Sir Ensign Kellier called out, holding a datapad. We just received a transmission from Earth Command. Morrow looked up, put it through. A moment later, a voice came over the speaker. It was calm and formal. This is High Command. We've received confirmation of the successful strike on the Varn command node. Outer Rim threat level has dropped significantly. All remaining fleets ordered to regroup and prepare for peace negotiations. Well done. Earth owes you. The message ended. Peace negotiations. The words felt strange after so much blood had been spilled. Morrow knew it wouldn't be real peace. Not yet. Not for long. But it was a start. He stood again, slower this time. His body ached. His mind was still sharp, but the weight of everything was beginning to settle on his shoulders. He turned to Kira. Get us moving. Slow and steady. I want all ships accounted for. No one gets left behind. Aye, Commander. The engines of the Resolute hummed louder as the ship began to move through the wreckage, leading the fleet home. In the distance behind the dust and ruin, stars still shone. The journey back through the asteroid belt was slow and quiet. The battle was over, but its echoes lingered in the silence between the stars. Burned-out wreckage floated past the windows of the surviving human ships, a reminder of the cost paid for victory. Inside the UHS Resolute, the crew worked without complaint. They were tired, worn down, but they moved with purpose. Some had burns, others limped from injuries, and many wore bandages over fresh wounds, yet not one had asked to stop. They were alive, and more importantly, they had won. Commander Jackson Morrow stood once again on the bridge, watching the stars slide by. He hadn't slept since the battle. He didn't feel the need. His thoughts were too heavy. Damage control team's report full life support is online. Lieutenant Kira Voss said. Her voice was soft but steady. Drive system stable. We'll reach the rendezvous point in 6 hours. Good, Morrow said. He turned to her. Any sign of the Varn? None. Long-range scans show retreat patterns. Most of their ships are scattering into deep space. Morrow nodded slowly. They've lost their grip out here, at least for now. He walked to the center of the bridge and looked around. It was no longer the clean, ordered command deck it had been days ago. Panels were scorched. Power lines ran along the floor. 2 seats were empty. Their usual officers gone, killed during the ambush at the node. Still, the bridge functioned. The mission had been completed. The enemy had fallen. A soft chime sounded. Commander said Ensign Kalea, we're receiving personal messages from Earth and the colonies, families, officials, survivors. They're coming in by the hundreds. Morrow didn't reply right away. He simply stared out at the stars. Then he said, forward them to the crew, every single one. Let them see what they've done. Let them hear it from the people they saved. Kalea smiled slightly and began transmitting the messages across the ship. Morrow turned and left the bridge. He walked the corridors slowly, passing crew members as he went. Some saluted him, some only nodded, others gave tired, grateful smiles. He passed medbays where doctors moved from bed to bed. He paused at one doorway and stepped inside. The room was dim. A dozen wounded lay on cots. One young officer, barely 20, looked up as Morrow entered. She tried to sit up, but he shook his head. Rest, he said simply. She smiled faintly. We did it, sir. Yes, he said. You did. He moved from one bed to another, speaking briefly to each crew member. There were no long speeches, just words of quiet respect. His presence alone was enough. They trusted him. And now they had seen what that trust could achieve. Eventually, he returned to his quarters. The room was bare. A desk, a bunk, a screen. He sat at the desk and brought up the mission log. There were reports to file, losses to record, but he stared at the screen for a long time before typing anything. He thought of the past, Horizon 6, his brother's face, the silence after that battle, the shame, and now, this. He had led them into the storm, and they had come out the other side. After several minutes, he typed only one sentence: mission complete, target eliminated, victory achieved. He closed the report and leaned back. A chime sounded again. Another transmission. This one was marked classified, from Earth Command. He opened it. A short message played. Commander Morrow, your leadership has shifted the course of this war. Varn forces across multiple sectors are collapsing. Negotiations are beginning. You are ordered to return to Earth Command for full debrief. A hero's welcome awaits you. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He turned off the screen and walked once more to the viewport. The stars were quiet again, still, endless. He stood there a long time. Outside, the fleet followed behind, damaged but unbroken. Survivors, warriors, humans. They had faced the darkness and made it blink. And as the engines of the Resolute hummed steadily in the silence, Jackson Morrow finally closed his eyes.